معرفة.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let us now discuss about the role of parties in a Sukuk transaction, right? So there are multiple parties in a Sukuk. So let us start with listing them and then discussing about them. So the first is Obligor. So Obligor basically is the client or the customer who wants to, liquidity and who has taken Sukuk as an avenue to raise that liquidity. The second is the lead arranger. Third is the Shariah Scholar, legal counsel, auditor, issuer, delegate, rating agency, listing agent, registrar, calculation agent, transfer agent, and the principal paying agent. So let's talk about each one of them in a little bit more detail. So let's start with the Obligor. So an Obligor is an entity in need of funding which sells the Sukuk certificates directly to investor against the cash payment, right? So the issuer is usually a special purpose vehicle which is bankruptcy remote. It's a shell company, right? So the issuer is an SPV which also declares a trust, right? And the issuer is the one the issuer SP is the one who enters into legal agreements with the Obligor. Technically, the Obligor, as I said, is the customer or the client, whether it is a corporate or it's a FI, financial institution, or it's a sovereign who wants to raise liquidity through a Sukuk and who is responsible to pay back to the issuer SPV and all the liquidity which he has received. Obligor, as I said, might be any entity, and the Obligor is basically the entity which wants to raise liquidity. Now let's understand the second party, who is the lead arranger. Now lead arrangers are mainly or basically financial institutions, investment banks, and they are responsible for structuring, managing and timing the issue. So let me just explain a bit more detail here. So lead arrangers are specialized financial institutions, mainly investment banks, who are well adept and well qualified to advise the client or the obligor in terms of how to issue a Sukuk, in which market to go, what is a good timing on how the international markets are responding, what could be the expected rate at which the Sukuk may close, so on and so forth. So lead arrangers, again, when the lead arranger are signed up by the obligor after the initial RFP, right, then the responsibilities are shared between the lead arrangers as well. So for example, if there are 5 banks who have been signed up as lead arrangers, one lead arranger could take the responsibility of engaging with the rating agencies. One lead arranger could become a documentation bank, and that lead arranger, that bank would coordinate with the legal counsel, lead the whole process of documentation, finalization and structuring. And then a marketing piece, one lead arranger could take the responsibilities. Then again, these lead arrangers, some could do an underwriting and some could do a soft kind of a best effort basis approach, meaning to say one of the lead arrangers say that I underwrite portion of the Sukuk, meaning to say I would be responsible to raise $100 million for you, and in case if I fail to raise, or in case if there is a shortfall, I underwrite to buy that shortfall from you, meaning to say the Sukuk. There are some lead arrangers who provide underwriting, and there are some lead arrangers who do not provide an underwriting. And in terms of the services these lead arrangers provide to the obligor, there is a fee which is paid to each of the lead arrangers based on their expertise, based on their engagement. So this is generally the role of the lead arrangers, right? And they play a very crucial role, because at the end of the day, lead arrangers are the ones who advise the obligor from the day one until the day close in terms of all the aspects of the Sukuk. So those are the lead arrangers. Now let us come to the third piece, the Shariah Scholar. Now Shariah Scholar, generally what happens is that the lead arrangers are also providing the Sharia structuring advice through their own Sharia boards to the obligor, right? So that is the one kind of Sharia advice which the obligor receives. A requirement nowadays for the issuer is that to appoint a Sharia advisor on the Sukuk for the life of the Sukuk. So that is another requirement by the Sharia scholars or the regulators with regards to appointing a Sharia advisor on the Sukuk. And the Shariah scholars generally issue a Shariah pronouncement. So each of the Shariah boards of the lead arrangers also provide a Shariah pronouncement. And if there is a Shariah board of the Obligor, and because if the Obligor is a financial institution, Islamic financial institution, they'll have their own Shariah board. In some jurisdictions like Malaysia, there is also a requirement for the issuer to seek an approval from the Securities Commission on the Sharia aspect in terms of the structure of the Sukuk. So in a way, as I said, Sharia advice or the Sharia scholar's role is very important in the whole structuring of the Sukuk. And the Sharia scholars, as I said, could be of Obligor, could be of the regulator, and could be, and it's required for the Sukuk to have their own Sharia board, and the Sharia advisor issues a Sharia pronouncement, which becomes an important marketing document for the comfort of the investors. Now, in terms of the legal counsel, there are two counsels. One is a legal counsel for the lead arrangers. The other is the legal counsel for the Obligor, right? So there are two law firms appointed, and they both represent, one is representing the Obligor, the client, the other is representing all the lead arrangers. And both these legal counsels work very closely in terms of finalization of the documentation. Most of the Sukuks in today's time are English law governed. So meaning to say both the counsels are generally English law firms, but sometimes American law firms are also advising. As I said, because it's an English law governed document, the counsels are mostly English law based. And they have the primary role of the legal counsel is the preparation of the documentations, right? The solicitors are involved in the due diligence process as well and must produce a legal opinion for the transaction. So this is also a very important aspect. There is a proper legal opinion which is received from the legal counsels. In this whole journey of the Sukuk issuance, the role of the lawyers and the role of legal counsels is very prominent. And in my experience of engaging with them, I have found them quite experts in their own domain in terms of law, and many of them are also having expertise or deeper understanding of Sharia, and that becomes an important contribution for the effective finalization of the documentation, because once the documentation, the draft documentation are prepared, the documentation is shared with the multiple banks who are the lead arrangers. So there are a lot of comments which come from various Sharia teams, and these comments needs to be addressed, answered. This comment needs to be first of all understood very clearly. So the role of the legal counsel is quite prominent. We have to appreciate the positive contribution they have done many a times at various levels, because there are sometimes there are new concept approaches with regards to the structures. So the role of the legal counsel is very important. A better counsel would always, add value to the Sukuk structure. Now let's look at the fifth party, who is an auditor. Now auditors are involved when the issuer is an entity that produces accounts, example companies and quasi-government entities, and the lead manager and the legal advisors review the issuer's accounts for at least the previous 3 years. And if the issue is listed, the audited accounts may need to be published or incorporated by reference, right? And auditors work closely with the Sharia advisors to ensure Sharia compliance with Islamic finance principles. And auditors provide a letter of consent for the inclusion of the report in the listing particulars or information memorandum. And auditors issue comfort letters to the managers confirming no material adverse change in the issuer's financial position since the latest audited accounts, so that accuracy of any unaudited financial information in the offering document. So the role of auditor is again very important, because at the end of the day, these audited information goes into the prospectus, which becomes like a marketing document for the investors. So the role of auditors is also very important as one of the parties in this whole process of structuring a Sukuk. Now let's come to the issuer, right? Now an issuer is a legally recognized entity responsible for the development, registration and the sale of securities to finance its operations. Now you see, issuers and obligors are basically the same. So and issuers may be corporations, investment trusts or government bodies at both domestic and international levels. They are legally obligated to fulfill duties like disclosing financial conditions, reporting material developments, and complying with the regulations as per relevant legal and regulatory frameworks. Not confuse you, obligor and the issuers in a way, or they are the same parties. Sometimes from a jargon perspective they are called issuers and sometimes they are obligors, but they are same. Now in the context of a sukuk issuance, a delegate refers to an entity, often a financial institution. The delegate acts on behalf of the trustee to perform specific duties related to sukuk certificates and underlying assets. Now let us understand here, the SPV is majorly or mainly a orphan company, and the directors of the SPV are generally the partners of a law firm. The SPV itself doesn't have staff to perform activities, and that is where a delegate is appointed, and the delegate, which is a financial institution, performs these activities. So this is the role of a delegate. So the role of delegate becomes specially relevant in situations where the capital market law permits the beneficiary to issue their own sukuk. So you have to understand that there is a very defined and important role which the delegate fulfills in the structuring of sukuk. Now let's come to another party, which is the rating agency. Now they become very important because at the end of the day, rating plays a vital role in terms of giving a comfort level to the investors. A rating agency plays a vital role in assisting investors to make a well-informed decision when considering sukuk investments. Now these ratings provide an independent assessment of the creditworthiness of the sukuk issuer and the associated risks. They offer valuable insights into the issuer's ability to meet its financial obligation, the level of risk associated with the investment. Investors can use credit ratings as a guide to evaluate and make a decision to enter into or purchase a sukuk, right? So globally, there are multiple investors sitting across the globe, and for them, one of the main parameters is the rating given by the rating agencies. And the major rating agencies which the sukuks use mainly are Moody's, Fitch and S&P. They are the prominent rating agencies who provide their rating on the sukuks. And as I said, this becomes very important with regards to making a decision by the investors. And one of the lead arrangers coordinates with the rating agencies from the beginning till the end, till the final rating is given to the sukuk. Now, listing agent basically acts as an intermediary between the issuer and the stock exchange, because at the end of the day, most of the sukuks are listed instruments, and for listing there is an activity which needs to be done. There needs to be a proper engagement with the relevant stock exchanges where you want to list the sukuk, and for that an agent is appointed, and the responsibility of the agent is to complete this duty of listing this sukuk at the exchange. Now the agent prepares all necessary materials including the prospectus for submission to the exchange. The listing agent facilitates the listing process, ensuring compliance with the exchange requirements. On certain exchanges, a listing agent must be appointed by an issuer to communicate with the listing authority on its behalf, lodge necessary documents with the authority and advise the issuer on the listing rules. So this is also a very important piece, because many a times sukuks are listed on multiple exchanges, right? And this activity needs to be done in a very efficient and timely way. And whatever is the requirement from the listing authorities, that requirement needs to be fulfilled in a proper time. So all this activity is taken care of by the listing agent. So registrar is an entity or individual responsible for maintaining records of ownership for securities such as stock and sukuk. They ensure that every transaction is accurately recorded. They ensure that the shareholders receive their dividends. They ensure that the corporate actions like stock splits or mergers are executed seamlessly. Without registrar, the financial markets would lack transparency and trust that investors rely on. So the registrar includes details such as the outstanding face number of the certificates, serial number, dates of issue, transfer of ownership, payments of periodic distribution and investor details. The role of the registrar again is very important in the sukuk issuance process. A calculation agent is a party that performs calculations as set out in the transactional document. These documents require calculation for their operation. The calculation agent determines periodic distribution amounts, particularly for floating rate sukuk. For fixed rate sukuk, a calculation agent is not required. In scenarios requiring more intricate coupon payments, especially when dealing with floating rates linked to indices or derivatives. The calculation agent at the agent bank assumes a vital role. The agent performs complex calculations ensuring precise determination of coupon payments according to the specific terms and conditions. So this is the role of calculation agent, and as we have understood, specifically in the floating rate sukuk, their role becomes very vital. The transfer agent works for the security issuer to record changes of ownership, maintain security holder records, cancel and issue certificates, and distribute dividends. Transfer agents are usually banks or trust companies, but sometimes a company acts as its own transfer agent, right? So transfer agents are required to be registered with the SEC or with the bank regulatory agency if the agent is a bank. Most issuers identify their transfer agent on their company website under the Investor Relations tab. You may need to contact the company directly to obtain the transfer agent's name and the contact information. A principal paying agent is an agent of the issuer responsible for coordinating payments of principal and profit under the sukuk. It receives the payment monies from the issuer and distributes them to the appropriate paying agents, who in turn pay the sukuk holders residing in their jurisdictions. The principal paying agent handles the collection and distribution of principal and the profit payments associated with the sukuk. The role of principal paying agent is limited to processing and distribution of payments. If there is only a principal paying agent without a sukuk trustee, there is no independent party to protect the rights of the sukuk holders in the case of default. So again, the principal paying agent is very important because the payments are, as we have discussed, are on a periodic basis. If it is a biannual, so every 6 months the payment needs to be done, and then at maturity payment needs to be done. So the role of the paying agent is also quite vital and important.
معرفة.